My name is Oliver Schilke. I'm an assistant professor of management and organizations at the University of Arizona. So a lot of times my research topics are initially motivated by an observation that I make inside organizations, and only then I kind of look at it from a more theoretical perspective and identify a puzzle that's somehow related to that topic. For example, my research interest in trust was really motivated by me talking to managers in interorganizational relationships, and I was really amazed by how much they insisted that trust is a big success factor for them in realizing these interorganizational relationships. So that kind of made me wonder, like, what is trust even an interorganizational relationship? Is it an interpersonal thing, or is there something at the organizational level that exists between organizations? If that's the case, how does it develop over time? How are different levels intertwined? These would be the theoretical questions that kind of came out of the empirical observation. I'm actually in the process of currently finishing, hopefully, the write-up of a paper really soon, where we look at the bottom-up aggregation of organizational decisions, which is a topic that's not looked at too often. We often only look at the top-down, how organizations impact themselves on individuals and how that shapes their individual decision-making, and I've done that a lot, but I'm always wondering, like, how are organizational decisions ultimately formed? There are obviously several individuals and organizations, and how do they interact and come together and form the organizational decisions? So that is the broad question that motivates this research paper that I'm working on together with Henning Piersonke at INSEAD, and we're looking at information aggregation. So when people come together in committees, strategic committees or chart management teams, they first have a discussion, but ultimately what we see is that they oftentimes vote, right? Like, they have a discussion, but still maybe have different opinions on what the organization should ultimately be doing. And when that's the case, they vote on an organizational decision. And we were wondering what impact do the different rules that are being applied for the vote have on organizational decision making. So you can imagine all sorts of voting rules. What we're interested in is, like, what threshold is being applied? Is it a very conservative threshold, such that almost everybody has to agree for the organization to greenlight a project? Or is it a more liberal threshold, where only a few people need to greenlight a project and the organization would go ahead? Well, you could intuitively assume that a more liberal threshold will lead to a more liberal decision-making of organizations, but we see actually in our results, and it's an experiment that we are running, that this is not really the case. Individuals kind of counteract the decision rule. So in a way that the more conservative the voting rule is, the more liberal they feel they can be in their decision-making. So if they see that everybody has to agree, then they are more willing to take a risk, because it's ultimately not being traced back to them, that they're accountable for the decision, and this is why they feel they can be more liberal. So in a way, the more conservative dynamics, or the more conservative mathematics of the decision threshold, gets counteracted by individuals changing their voting behavior as a result of the threshold. Trust could be, of course, introduced as a contingency to make it more complex, the setting. Like, you could imagine if people trust each other really a lot in the committee, there might be less of a fear to cast a pivotal vote. That the accountability pressures might be not as high if they really get along very well and trust each other very well, then maybe the effect would be attenuated. I'm currently really interested in micro-foundations generally. How do levels of analysis interact? And this is the paradigm that I'll be using to sketch out my future research projects. So I have different topics that fit into that research paradigm, including trust, including organizational routines, how they kind of interact at different levels of analysis. And this is going to be probably the framework for my future research program. There are obviously multiple success factors, too many to talk about, but to me, what is really notable is that research is a team sport. It's not something that you do alone, where well, sometimes you sit alone in front of your computer, but still where a lot of impetus comes from is from your immediate social network. And what I found important is to have mentors and colleagues that are not only knowledgeable in terms of, the research competencies that you have to have, but it's also super important to have folks that you're looking forward to work with. I don't think that there's anything as motivating as looking forward to your next meeting with co-authors and really pushing forward your research program. This kind of can make it challenging to find the right people because the stakes now all of a sudden are really high. You need somebody who's competent, who has an overlap in research interests, and who you really like as a person. But if you are able to find these people, I think then success will ultimately come automatically.